right, welcome to the next episode of the Vets in Real Estate Podcast. I'm Will Curtis, and I'll be joined by Steve Guzek, a Air Force veteran now turned real estate broker. So stay tuned. Well, welcome, Steve. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so let's just get right into it, right? You had a little bit of a different career, especially what you're doing now within real estate, where you're not necessarily fully in the brokerage, but working a lot more with investors than what I think most of our guests have had in the past. But let's start back with what you did while you were in service.
Sure. So let's see. I actually went into the Air Force after graduating from Penn State. I always wanted to be a pilot, right? So my earliest memory of any toy is as an airplane, right? So that was what I was going to do my entire life. So I think I was blessed at least with an early idea of what I wanted to do. And so this whole process of, well, what do I want to do when I grew up? I always knew that that's what I wanted to do. It's kind of, I didn't realize that until after you start talking to other people.
Right.
So went to school for aerospace engineering. Was going to go in the Air Force, except the Air Force said we don't need any more pilots. So that was kind of devastating. And so they said, come on in as an engineer. So I actually went in as a flight test engineer, was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base. I ended up working on projects with like Chuck Yeager as the spokesman for it.
Oh, wow.
Edwards Air Force Base is a place where you go to the Oak Club and you have beers with astronauts, test pilots, and, you know, just like superhero mentor type people, right? And so it was just an amazing place to enter it. I was fortunate enough to apply for pilot training after a couple of years and got accepted with some recommendations from test pilots and people that I flew with.
I mean, if Chuck Yeager's signing off, I think you're good, right?
Yeah, I got his signature on his autobiography, but
okay.
No,
not on the application.
No. But I was fortunate enough to fly in the backseat of F4s and do actual like in-flight testing as an engineer. So I had folks that could kind of attest to send them to pilot training. So it was a good opportunity.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And so that was the end of my engineering career. So not just because you go to school for something doesn't mean you're going to end up doing that. So I went to pilot training, fortunate enough to make the cut, flew F4s at first. And so I was a young guy in a bunch of retiring airframes. Okay, so the programs were going away. So I got a chance to fly the F4 before it went away. Then I transitioned to F-111s.
Okay.
Flew that as they went away. Every other assignment, I would fly T-38s or AT-38s and help train pilots and kind of lead them into fighter training. And then again, flew with the Taiwanese for a while. We had
with the 111s?
No, with AT-38. So the Taiwanese purchased 120 F-16s. And they really had no building block towards it. So we ended up training them in AT-38s and basic fighter maneuvers.
Okay.
And then they were able to transition to an F-16. Did that, transition to F-117. I ended up being the chief of mission planning for the F-117 community, and so went to combat in the stealth. Was a combat commander, so leading 70 of your friends across enemy lines. And we were talking earlier about World War II movies, and I can attest that flak that you see, it looks just like a movie.
Really?
Yeah, you're going through that, and you go IP to target, maintain course, drop your bomb, and do that. So interesting. Really nice flying at night before the bombs drop anyway.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. I can imagine that is awesome. And the 117 is such a unique aircraft where, again, there's not a whole lot of them out there, and to be a part of that program's got to be absolutely just fascinating.
Yeah, it was definitely a highlight of my career to be able to do that, and it was probably the most impactful thing I've probably done. To kind of world events.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So you went from flying F4s, which personally I think is one of the coolest aircraft that has ever been built, to 111s, which is just an amazing aircraft as well, especially when they started taking that bomber role and, lobbing bombs and all that, like,
Yeah.
and then to
Yeah.
117. Why in the world would you stop flying in the Air Force if it was that
Well,
case?
that's a great question. I think a really good answer for that. So after doing a combat tour, and then after that, I went with a guy that was the wing commander. I kind of followed him up to the Pentagon and Langley. So I was based at the Pentagon Crisis Action Team and then ACC Langley, and did a tour there. And at some point, I'm up to, I'm a lieutenant colonel or newly pinning on lieutenant colonel, and I just decided that it was time to get out. My son was 2 years old. I wanted to be there for kindergarten, and so I worked an assignment that I could get to Randolph Air Force Base, teach T-38 IPs there, kind of finish out my career, built my retirement house, and I'm still living in it now. So,
Yeah.
and I was able to take my son to school every morning, pretty much whenever I wanted to. And I've been there for all the games and everything else. So all those activities. So, family decision. That's it.
No, and as we've had this conversation now several times with folks, that tends to be kind of a leading indicator for a lot of folks is that, military life is tough on the family. I know that was part of the reason, I didn't have the family, but I knew that I wanted one. And it was one of those, like, watch too many of my soldiers do first birthdays, first steps, first words, all those kind of things, on video while we were deployed. And, I maybe selfish. I didn't want that for myself or for my family. And it's interesting that that's so many service member stories. They're getting out simply to have a better family life.
Yeah. And so, as well, as you're deciding what's assignment next, should I take this one? Should I go for that one? You kind of, there's some angst on what your career path might be. But when it was time to retire, that was probably the easiest decision that I had to make.
That's good.
It was very, it was all right there in front of me, and it was definitely the way to go.
Yeah. So when you got out, you didn't go directly into real estate. You're probably one of the few of us that didn't go right into real estate, at least so far, right? So what did you do right when you got out?
Yeah, so I got my real estate license before I actually retired from the Air Force because that was going to be my path. So to back up a little bit, the very first house my wife and I bought in Arizona was a bank repo. Every place we would go, we would try to invest. We'd maintain houses as rentals. I would do owner financing. I would, kind of both ways. We would offer people owner financing. I would try to convince other people to do owner financing, chasing, not necessarily flips, but, rentals, but, some flips, whatever. But we were always interested in that. I've read all the books. I, paid all the paid for all the courses, and that's what I wanted to do. And I've always had an entrepreneurial kind of spirit. So, for example, I started actually getting a master's in engineering. After about 3 courses, I said, this is not what I want to do. And I got an MBA instead. So that was kind of my draw, is to, at some point, get out of the service and have a business.
Okay.
I don't know what it was going to be, but real estate was really good. As a matter of fact, I often thought and talked to other folks that I worked with. I said, man, if we could just find 3 or 4 guys that work as hard as we do every day, my God, there's nothing that would stop us.
Yeah.
You couldn't be stopped. We're unstoppable, right? So let's try to work together. Let's invest, and let's do something like that. And whereas a lot of my peers during the time that they're separating, filling out airline applications, and there's coaching specifically for that, and how do you dress, what words do you say, who do you get endorsed, so you don't get blackballed and stuff, because that's the thing. You can go to an airline and one guy doesn't like you, boom, you can be out. Yeah, so there's that stuff. I just had no interest in being an airline pilot. My wife actually was a flight attendant, so we lived the life of commuting and trips and red eyes and all that stuff, and it just wasn't attractive to me. So I was kind of an oddball during that transition time. So, but I have a skill. I'm a qualified pilot. I could step into that. And I still wanted to do some flying. So I put on a blue suit and a tie and a white shirt, and I went around San Antonio, all the buildings around the airport. I just started knocking on doors. And I was like, hey, I'm a pilot. I'm interested in management, business, any kind of the small businesses around there. Got an aerospace engineering degree. What can I do? I was fortunate enough to meet somebody that said, yeah, I think we need like a part-time pilot for a charter service. So I'm interested. It didn't matter what it paid. I wasn't even a discussion, right, at first, right? So guy said, okay, come back next week and talk to the owner of the company. And the owner of the company came in and we talked for like 2 hours. I'm like, I'm just a part-time pilot. That's a really good conversation. I'm really engaged in it and everything. And then at the end of it, they go, well, all right, here's the deal. Daryl here is the general manager, but he's moving on. So he's leaving in 2 weeks because he's got another job in real estate. So they said, we'd like you to be the general manager for the company.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I'll do that. How much does it pay?
A whole lot, I'm sure a whole lot more than a part-time pilot.
Yeah, well, not much actually, But the idea was building business. It was a private jet charter management company. Mm-hmm. They managed 3 aircraft, and didn't own anything. Had like 3 employees or so. So I took that gig, and then over the next 7 years, we grew that company. As a management company, it didn't have a certification. You couldn't go out and offer things for lease and everything independently. You have to be kind of like code sharing with somebody else. So we went through all of the process to get certified with the FAA to be a standalone private jet charter airline.
Okay.
And then we expanded it to what they call 10 or more, which means that you can have 10 or more passengers. So now it's just a bigger operation, more complex. We ended up with 13 aircraft operated in 3 states and about 26 pilots, and support staff for it. And it was just a wonderful ride.
Yeah.
And the whole time I would still invest in real estate. That was always out there. People would meet me down in the office, collect the rent, give me the deposit, do that stuff. So that was always out there.
Right.
And it was a wonderful opportunity. At some point, I became a partner in the business, the president and the director of operations for the charter airline. And just at some point, it was time to kind of move on.
Okay.
So I sold my share to the senior partner. Mm-hmm. I had 45%, he had 55%. So my vote was really,
ceremonial.
It's ceremonial, yeah. So it was just time to move on, and that was the right time to jump in full time to real estate.
Okay. So then you jumped in full-time to real estate. Now, were you just doing investing, or did you go the agent route, or?
No agent, so now I just kind of got recurrent with all my licensing and joined just somebody that I knew, hung my license there. They didn't want anything. I think I gave them, some sort of a split or something like that. And then I jumped from there to another franchise, which was where I stayed and really kind of developed my business. And then, so I went, I'll just say, so I went Remax to Phyllis Browning.
Okay.
And then now I'm with Lifestyles Multifamily.
Okay. So while you were in the agent role, before you got to Lifestyles, while you were in the agent role, what were you doing? What was a day in the life look like there for you?
Yeah. So, I managed kind of a transition. So here we're talking about transitions. Okay. Mm-hmm. Up front, there's a lot of work. Like you don't have any history, you don't know people. So when I was transitioning out of my flying job, I would actually continue to fly just some day missions as kind of a contract guy and help out. And then I would be in Cancun making phone calls on Google Voice. Nobody knows that I'm just calling from a 210 area code.
Right.
I'm sitting in Cancun or Bermuda or Washington State or, wherever, and just trying to follow up on leads and going that route. So that transition was, how do I develop it, right? So that was a time where Zillow was still kind of pretty effective as far as lead generation. And so I paid paid for leads, and I looked at the lowest price point that was where I could get the biggest impact. So I was very focused, like in the Converse area, and I focused on lower priced homes. I found that those people listen to you, they really appreciate you, and it was near the military bases. So I ended up working with a lot of military members, in and out, and I ended up getting referrals from there. So, the combination of kind of price point and the customer profile, I really focused on that.
Okay.
And I think that worked out well.
Now, did you, in advertising, were you like, look at me, Steve, former Lieutenant Colonel, Mr. Air Force, and your advertising, or was it just kind of naturally came up, or?
Well, yeah, it certainly, naturally comes up, and, especially if somebody identifies themselves as, inbound military, all you got to do is, talk to somebody for a couple of minutes and you realize they understand what a PCS is, they understand what TMO is, they understand what,
Sure.
go to the housing office and referrals, all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty straightforward. But yeah, I would, not so much lieutenant colonel, not pilot, but, just veteran.
Okay.
That's fair. That's really the important point of connection.
Why did you go with just veteran? Because as we've talked to some folks and we get questions often, it's, sometimes you'll see, sergeant major retired, or you'll see, chief master sergeant or whatever the case retired. And, it's almost still a picture of them in uniform, on business cards. Like some folks drastically go that direction. But why did you choose just the simply veteran and leave it alone instead of, I guess, I don't want to say hyper military, right? But why did you choose that path versus the other?
I just think, you're trying to connect with somebody on their level, regardless of where they are, right? So, whether it's perception or reality, doesn't matter. If it's their perception, it's a great. I never shied away from it.
Sure.
It always would come up in a conversation, but I just, again, you just meet people wherever they are, wherever your point of commonality is, right? So you're a veteran, I'm a veteran. That's good enough, right?
Sure.
To differentiate me from you beyond that I didn't think it was useful.
Okay, that's fair enough. And again, we get that question often: is why or should I go that route, or what's better? Should I mention? In some of the conversations we had as well, they're like, I don't even mention them a veteran. If it comes up naturally, then it's great. We got to build a way to build rapport. I kind of do the same thing you've done as well. As I'll mention veteran, but not way out there. I mean, obviously, running a podcast now, if you Google my name, it comes up. It changes things a little bit, right? But at least in my business side of things, it's there, but not overt.
Right. Now, I tell people all the time, and folks that I've worked with for, any length of time, a week, even, but you get me talking about flying or you get me talking about real estate, and you got to shut me up. Right? So I can talk about either one of those to an endless degree and enjoy it immensely.
Okay, fair enough. So you did the agent thing for a while. What was your least favorite part? Like, everybody sees, oh yeah, real estate, I make all this money. You're telling stories about you're sitting on a beach in Cancun. No, you were just in Cancun at the airport, right? On the beach. But I mean, we see that kind of, influencer type real estate agent. We're like, oh, I'm doing some work while they're sitting on a beautiful beach or something like that, or they're outside. You literally had owned private jets, at least at the company. You could have taken those selfies and those kind of pictures, through that time where, many of them will get out there and like, oh, I'm going to go see a client. Like, that's not even your plane. It doesn't work. It's a static display. Those kind of things. But why did you choose to do, the agent thing? What was the struggle? I guess maybe that's the question I'm trying to get to. Where did you struggle, or where was those struggles for you early on?
Plenty of struggles. It's just, okay, I'm an agent, and now, we use the term often, don't be a secret agent. Right?
Sure.
All right. So, man, you just got to get yourself out there. So I'm not necessarily that gregarious, right? I'm not, I'll enjoy if I have something to talk about, fine. But, it's always a struggle to put yourself out there one way or another, and especially at first you have insecurities and you get to the third question and, the first question's easy, second question, I can handle that. But when you're new, sometimes that third question is a little tougher to get to. So you just have to kind of plow through that and treat everything as a learning experience. But What I didn't like, man, open houses as a residential agent are probably the best cost per lead
Okay.
tool that there is, but it's the first thing you just want to not do anymore. For me, right?
Fair.
Somebody comes in the door and you have to convince them that you're valuable, and so that's fine. You come up with your value propositions, and if people have an agent or if they're just not interested, that's fine. But that's starting from scratch every single time. And so, again, when it comes time for agents to re-energize, let's say, after COVID, people's business have gone down. So what's a good way to go back? Well, get back into the open houses. Any new agent, that's the best cost per lead, investment of your time. But it's nice to recapture weekends too.
And I know for me being on the commercial side, like that's the one thing that everybody's like, I want to go commercial because I don't want to work weekends anymore. I don't want to work the nights. And I mean, for me, 5:30, 6 o'clock, the phone stops ringing. I might have a California client that calls a little bit later than that based off the time zones. But I mean, it's rare there. And that's what I think most residential agents, it sounds fun for a little bit. And then working 5 nights a week, Saturday and Sunday, or maybe at least Saturday, and you're taking Sunday off. I know some will keep that boundaries. I can imagine. How did you balance that?
Sure. So here, going back to military transition, all right, as a retiree, okay, so this applies to people that are retiring, maybe not so much for folks separating, all right? After I retired, I had enough money to have groceries, a car payment, gas, healthcare. I can take risks. So that was very enabling for me. It was enabling me to start, and grow a business. And then after that, transition to real estate because you have these variations in income. So that transition from aviation to as a real estate broker, there was a period of time where, we had to figure out how to budget things. So as a retiree, those things were, that's how we kind of managed through that time. Transitioning beyond that, just as far as focus on work and focus on, use whatever technology is of the day. At the time, Zillow was just an up and coming thing. I jumped on that. It was like best of Zillow and great reviews, and that would multiply by itself. So I was able to leverage that. Now, not so much. You got to come up with something else. Maybe do a podcast,
right?
Use social media more, and so I didn't rely on those things much.
Okay. So if you were starting over today, what do you think you would do differently? You said not Zillow, but if you're starting today.
Yeah. Again, obviously social media is a must.
Okay.
Right now. But here's something else that helps people transition, and keep this in mind maybe during the time if you have another career, if you're starting from another career. The average age of the San Antonio Board of Realtors member is not 25, right? It's usually,
older.
A second career or third career. Okay, so what are we doing to set ourselves up long-term regardless? And that brings me to what I'm doing now and what I've been doing over the last 20, 25 years or so is how do we find some passive income? Real estate. So it's puzzling to me why real estate agents that have been in the business for 20 years don't have passive income through real estate, whether it's investing through syndications, buying single family homes, buying their own little apartments, doing something. You're in the business. You have opportunities. You see everything. Like, how did you get to the point here where you don't have something to back you up?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally possible to spend $10,000 and create $300 a month.
Right.
There's your groceries at least, helps you out with groceries. You do that a couple of times, you get things covered. So it's just like with the military retirement, that's not going to cover everything, but you kind of stack things up. Yeah. Okay, so I got this. I've got 2 homes. I got 3 homes. I got 10 homes. I'm investing with this guy as a partner. So you gotta pursue those things. And if you do hear other people talking about them, that's a conversation you need to get into and learn. And that's how the whole function of commercial real estate is as an investment.
So what is it that you do? You kind of alluded to what you're doing now, but what is it you're actually doing now with Lifestyles?
So I'm with Lifestyles Realty, which is a sister company to Lifestyles Unlimited, which is an education and mentoring company.
Okay.
So it's one of those companies where, they have radio shows and you can go once a month. We have meetings where we just kind of introduce concepts. And the idea is that we work with other investors that are like us, like we call them just like-minded. We have a set of rules that we abide by, that we all mutually agree, so that we all know that if I invest in you, it's going to be pretty much the same rules as investing with somebody else.
Okay.
So there's a level of confidence that we can go forward with. And so we take some of our retirement money, we pool it together, and the group that I'm with, for example, we just had a big expo this last weekend, and so we had some really good examples of people that are even as young as 19 and 20 years old buying apartments, being able to raise millions of dollars within just a few days, because there's a confidence of the members that I know that this guy's square, and I'm willing to at least invest some money in him.
Okay.
So these are private placement investments, and so my job is to find good deals for them.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you're just brokering those deals for them. They're raising the funds. You're going out there and do the actual brokerage work.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm the hunter.
Got
So
it.
I'm looking for the deals. I'll introduce it to anyone that's interested in buying an apartment. And it's really kind of like an open house, but I already know everybody, right? So when I go to a meeting, they're like, "Oh, hey, Steve, hey, I'm looking for this." Great. Now I know. And we follow up. And if I have something that I'm aware of that's on the market, I know Will's looking for that, so I'll contact Will. And that's just the normal brokerage, business model beyond that. But I pretty much limit it to our members.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like they've already built the investor pool for you, and I don't want to say it's shooting fish in a barrel, but I mean it kind of feels like you're not out there beating the streets. You're not having to do your open houses. You're not doing all that because the company kind of builds that in, and I would imagine. They're not hiring an agent that's brand new.
Right.
Right. I would imagine they've got some experience. They've been in the investment space for a while before they bring in somebody.
Yeah. So we've got kind of what we consider like a single family track, for maybe people that just need to build some equity, and just start. And then if you have some equity, if you have some cash retirement, then, the numbers are a little bit bigger. That's all.
Okay.
But I've been a member of the group since 2017. So
Gotcha.
I've been investing as an apartment investor, as a passive investor, so a limited partner in deals. And so when they needed somebody here in San Antonio, I think they had like 80 people that raised their hand and said, "Yeah, let me do that." So I kind of got that opportunity and decided to go in that full time. So now I'm like fully immersed in that ecosystem.
Sure. Yeah. So you talked about why agents don't invest, and I think that's a lot of folks that are leaving the military, looking at a career, investing is part of that, right? My goal was to be a house flipper, and I've never flipped a house, right? I think that's not uncommon for many of us that come into the military, especially I think on the enlisted side, where I remember making $1,500 a month as a PFC, thinking like, oh my God, I'm rich. It's the most money I'd ever made in my life at that time. But it was like, how do I make more? How do I start doing more with that? So as new agents are coming in, I think syndication, and I'm not picking on you guys, right? But I think sometimes the worry I have is it's a Holiday Inn Express weekend class. Come here, look at all, like it feels sketchy where I'm like, how many deals have you actually done? Oh, well, and it's kind of a hem and a haw and a kind of a, so how?
I've got a perfect answer for that.
Okay, fair.
I had a great answer for that. Before I started investing in that direction, like I told you, I was investing on my own. I got my license. I'm a broker. I work for great companies. And I have great mentors even within the companies as far as agents go. And just all kinds of oddball things have happened. I've got a lot of good experience, and so I would gravitate. Like if I talk to somebody and they say, "Hey, I want to buy a rental property. I want to invest." This is when I was working for whatever company. I get excited about that, right? I'm like, oh man, I can help you with that because I've been doing that for a while, and I really love that. And it's, it kind of takes the emotion out and everything. So in fact, I can give you a good example. I've got one couple that I've worked with for 10 years now, maybe more. I met them when they were engaged, right? They just stumbled into an open house or whatever, and they're like, yeah, we have some money. I kind of want to do this investing thing. How does this work and everything? I helped them buy a duplex, helped them buy 2 duplexes, helped them buy, another house, another bank repo, and after about, whatever, 5-10 transactions or so, they're married, they've got a couple of kids now. I still keep in touch with them. We're looking for a partnership, again now. So I've kind of helped people do that. Yeah. And one of the guys that I helped buy an investment property, he called me up after we closed and he said, hey, I got a new gig. I'm working for this group over here. It's an investment group, and I'm like, yeah, I heard them on the radio. I've taken all the courses, and every place I've been to, I've always gone to like the local real estate investment association. I've always been associated with them, and it's always the same thing, exactly what you say, right? And it's like, how can we get grandma to sell us a house for $1, right?
Right.
And, that kind of stuff. It's you go and it's not really what I want to do, but you go next town, you go anyway. And so I went to this meeting and I started meeting the people there. And they're doctors and they're lawyers, professionals, successful people, and the caliber of people and the discussions that we had. I was like, thanks for inviting me. I was just doing it as a favor. I was coming here because the guy invited me. Mm-hmm. But then after I met the other people that were the investors there, it was 10 steps, not just a step above. It was 10 steps above any other group that I've ever met. And so, 30 days later, I was a member. I was joining. I was investing with them as well.
So what was it? Was really just the caliber of the people that were there.
100%.
Okay, and I think that's the thing I always struggle with too. When I hear these syndication funds, or even as a broker, and I turn around and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we're a syndication fund." I'm like, oh, this might not close. And I've had several of those where I had a piece of dirt that was industrial, $3, $4 a square foot is what it should have gone for, and syndication fund came through and it's his first time GPing a deal. Of course, I've done hundreds of millions of dollars, but as a LP, like he's never actually done the whole thing. And he walks onto a piece of dirt that it's a super fund site, so it's an environmental mess. Yeah. Walks in, is like, oh, we'll pay you guys $15 per square foot. And I'm thinking, like, at best this is $4. Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll get going as soon as we get under contract. Of course, my clients are ecstatic. I'm thinking like, all right, $15 versus $4, like I may be on the beach in Mexico, right? Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a good deal for us. And then as soon as they start doing their due diligence, which they should have done beforehand, we gave them all the information. Was, oh, it's a super fund site. We don't know what that is. Those are the ones I think is always scary. So it's really finding those caliber of people. Yeah,
that would not have been our group.
Fair enough.
Yeah. No, we actually have right now where I work. I mean, we have the multifamily brokers that are the big names. They'll come and seek us out.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, that's very different. They're very different. So it's really finding reputation.
Correct.
That's fair. Looking back again, and you kind of answered what would you do a little bit differently now, but what would you do more of if you were starting all over again? What did you enjoy the most, and what would you have done more of? What have you had, I guess, the biggest return?
If you're focusing on brokerage and transactions, that's one thing. To answer that completely, it would be investing early.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I would have just gone even more in that direction earlier in life. That's kind of how I've guided my son. So I've got a son. When he was senior in high school, last week in high school, we bought a house together.
Oh, cool.
He gets passive income. So he gets a check. Hey, Dad, I got to get my $190 this month, I mean, it helps him with his car payment, it helps him with whatever, So now we got 2 homes together, So now he's got a car free. He's no debt in school. He's stable, and now he's thinking, yeah, there is something to this, right?
Yeah.
Now, as an agent, how do you transact there? You got to embrace whatever technology, whatever is going on. What's that tool to get in front of people today? And again, it's as simple as getting yourself exposed somehow. And open houses are still effective. People still drive by. I don't really have any. There's always networking events, and the things that are tried and true are tried and true for a reason.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
So, All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for your time. I hope we'll invite you back, and if we get questions on this one, I hope you'll be willing to come in and answer some of those questions we maybe get after the fact. But thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.